What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So we have a few stories we're going to cover off on in this one video rather than breaking it out into multiple videos, just because I think it's just going to be easier. They're pretty quick updates, some as of a couple days ago, going through as of this morning. So I figured why not just bunch them all up into one quick video. I said the articles are fairly short, but some great topics that we're going to be covering. Now the first one though, I'm not sure if it's great, but I want to cover it because I don't even understand why we're still going down this path of this particular attempt at this franchise or this character. Nonetheless, we're getting another one. So we're just going to jump right into it, guys. So as you see from this first article, this first topic we're going to talk about is the Mummy. Now, we've seen the first attempt at this with like Brendan Fraser. You know, while the first two films I thought were entertaining, the next two films were not entertaining. The spinoff, The Scorpion King, was not entertaining. And then when they eventually tried to reboot the franchise, reboot it, remake it with Tom Cruise, that was an atrocious film. But the studio thinks, nope, we still feel that the Mummy can be done and done correctly, so we're going to go at it a third time. So as you see here, Lee Cronin's The Mummy has wrapped production. So let's jump into this one quickly here. Last June, it was announced that Evil Dead Rise director Lee Cronin had signed on to write and direct a new genre project for Atomic Monster, Blumhouse Productions, and New Line Cinema. And in December, we found out that the mysterious project is, as it was revealed, that Cronin has come up with a new take on the concept of the Mummy. Cronin confirmed, quote, "This will be unlike any Mummy movie you've ever laid your eyeballs on before. God, I hope so, because the last one was trash, and the original, and I don't want to say original, because there are older attempts of the Mummy story beyond, before the Brendan Fraser ones that came about. So I'm not saying that those are the original. I say the original, I mean more modern day original. That's what I mean by that, just to clarify." Continue on with that quote, "I'm digging deep into the earth to raise something very ancient and very frightening." So end quote. The film is set to reach theaters on April 17th, 2026. And while producer Jason Blum confirmed on social media that production has started back on March 24th, Cronin has now taken to his own social media account to announce that production has wrapped. And here is, let's scroll down a little bit. Here's that post. And then you just see just the brief comment, all wrapped up, Lee Cronin's The Mummy. The cast of Lee Cronin's The Mummy includes Jack Rayner. Actually, I'm not even. I mean, you all see this as far as the casting goes. I think we all know who the casting is. Again, this isn't exactly new as far as the casting information. What's really new is the fact that the production has finally wrapped. So let's go down a little bit further. It should be noted that since the project is set up at New Line Cinema, this new take on the horror trope revolving around the ancient mummified undead has nothing to do with the classic Universal property. We heard back in May 2024 that there are 3 Mummy projects in development at Universal, including a prequel that screenwriter Wes Took is working on, and a sequel to the Brendan Fraser films, those being The Mummy 1999. You see the names here. As the Hollywood Reporter put it, plot details are being kept in the sarcophagus, but Cronin is hoping to breathe modern life into ageless evil. So I'm a bit surprised that we're even doing that. Most studios wouldn't even attempt this. And when I think about other studios that have a core character that they have avoided doing it altogether, like DC Studios, right? Like DC could have. There was all these talks. Hey, let James Gunn have his Superman film. Let him do his thing. But also, why not bring back Zack Snyder? Let him finish out his last 2 Justice League films, which would have had a completely different actor, a completely different version of Superman. And while I don't think that would have been a bad thing, you would have had closure on a previous thing that many fans want, while you're also bringing out a new version, a new universe. I can also understand the other side of that coin as to why you wouldn't want to do that. Here, I don't understand why we're working on 3 separate Mummy projects. Why I think there's having choice and having for the fans to say, hey, I really enjoyed the Brendan Fraser films. I would like to see that continue on. Now they're getting one. Now they're getting and on the same token, they're getting a prequel of the Mummy story, and this now separate, completely different one. I think you might, in doing something like this, you could tap the well dry, so to speak, on the topic, where we have seen in some instances where, like, Russell Crowe, when he did like those 2 exorcism films, one back to back, and I say back to back as in like the years they were released. I mean, you had one actor playing in 2 exorcism films, 2 completely different films and roles that he played. But the fans, critics didn't hold back on the fact that, hey, Russell Crowe did 2 different exorcism films. Something like this, I could see where people will push back on the fact that why are we getting 3 different mummy stories that have nothing to do with each other, while they all are completely separate things. So hopefully one doesn't hurt the other, and maybe their stories are going to be so vastly different. I expect like the Brendan Fraser films, if you're doing a sequel onto that, I see it being more of like a comedy action type film versus the other 2 that could be more horror centric and more a serious take. So as long as they can differentiate themselves across the board, it could be successful, but it also could be a very bad idea. And also, we don't even know the release date of these other 2 films, which if that could also be another thing that gives them some breathing room, right? The release dates in between each one. As a Hollywood Reporter put it, plot details, we already covered that. Atomic Monster and Blumhouse are co-financing the film. James Wan is producing alongside Jason Blum and John Kevill. Goes on to talk about more about that. And this version of The Mummy may be entirely separate from Universal's Mummy projects, but Cronin's collaborators at the Atomic Monster and Blumhouse Productions have been entrusted with making official reboots of some Universal properties. Just goes on to talk about some of the other reboots we've seen. They mentioned 2025 Wolfman reboot. Yeah, I mean, that was a reboot, but it wasn't a very liked reboot. And that one released, I think it was January this year. It was January. Again, there was a lot of hype put behind that film towards the end of last year. And again, not a lot of people liked it. And we later found out that what we did eventually get was not the original concept or original story. The original one had Ryan Gosling in it playing the main character. And once he dropped out and walked away, they retooled the entire film. So who knows what we would have gotten had he stayed in that original vision played out as far as the final film. So that's the latest on Lee Cronin's The Mummy wrap production, and we're going to get 2 separate Mummy films that have nothing to do with this one nor with each other. So, all right, so let's jump to the next topic. I'm not even sure. I'll try to pronounce this name correctly. Director Demián Rugna reveals when Evil Lurks sequel is in development. Now, if you haven't seen this film, When Evil Lurks, I know a lot of people love it, and I remember one of the first images, first trailers, bits of content I saw this. It has a lady, and it's one of the main posters that was used for this film. In the original film, when it came out, was this lady taking an axe, kneeling on the ground in like a trough, like a pig farm area, and she just slams it right into her face. And I remember seeing that thinking, oh, this is going to be an epic film. Saw the film. I believe it's available on Shudder for streaming. If you have Shudder, I believe that's where you can watch it at. It was far different than I thought it was going to be, based on the teaser and the trailer that we got ahead of the release. While it's not a bad film, I don't think it's an overwhelmingly great film. And I do know many people share a different opinion about that. Many people absolutely love the film. It does have some absolutely crazy parts in it when it comes to some of the kills. Like, I think the most vicious one is when there's a little girl and the dog attacks and kills this little girl as the husband or the father of these kids goes to his ex-wife's house to get them out of town. It did take me a couple of watches. The first time I watched it, didn't really care for it, but I had gone back and watched it a couple more times. I have a more appreciation for it now. But upon that first viewing, I thought it was just okay. But again, after a few more viewings, I appreciated the story and the concept a bit more. So again, for those of you who were true hardcore fans of it, we're getting a sequel. So writer-director Demián Rugna's gnarly possession horror movie When Evil Lurks ended on a somber note that left the door ajar for continuation. The filmmaker recently revealed that he is not done yet. A sequel is already in development. Rugna recently appeared on an episode of La Brama Infinita from the Argentine streaming channel Galentia, where he spoke about filming When Evil Lurks and the status of its sequel. The horror filmmaker tells the host, roughly translated, that we have part 2 written, yes, and we're just waiting for the funding to come through. We have to make some script modifications to make it perfect, but the studio that wants to make it is already there. While Rugna doesn't mention which studio is ready to produce, it's worth noting that Shudder was behind the first film, co-producing and Hermos, Sin, and Macho Films. Even better is that Rugna noting the script is near completion means that we're one step closer to production. Now, I don't, let's see here. I want to comment on that first. While, yeah, the script is almost done, but that doesn't mean anything. The script can be done, finalized, and ready to go, but if you don't have a studio to back you and you don't have the funding to do it, the script really means nothing. You gotta find someone who's gonna want to produce the film, fund the film. So again, if Shudder, it mentions that Shudder was behind the first film, not knowing where they're at, because this is one of the first times I'm hearing about a sequel to this film. I mean, obviously, if Shudder steps in and says, yeah, we'll fund it for you, then yeah, your script means something. Otherwise, it's just words on paper, in my opinion. The script is also key to Rugna's brand of horror. The director previously told BD, quote, "It's not easy to scare without a script that makes scars. The problem is when you have a script that really does not scar you, you use the jumps. Sorry, I'm saying scars, but this means scares. So let's start that over. It's not easy to scare without a script that makes scares. The problem is when you have a script that really does not scare you, you use the jump scare all the time. And I agree with that. We talked about the overly use of jump scares and how that definitely can ruin a horror film, because once you start overusing it early on, the rest of it is just meaningless. You're just expecting it to happen. I guess to make a script in which you don't know what is going to happen in 2 minutes with the character, in 2 minutes with this element, give me the chance to kick you at any time, and you are not prepared for that. If I make a script that you can't anticipate what happened or where I'm going, you won't feel protected because you recognize where I'm going. That's why I'm making movies for horror fans, not for the wider audience. Even though, I don't think you can necessarily, though, just ignore the wider audience. I think you've got to take them into account as well, because you want your film to reach as many people as possible. You don't want to just pigeonhole your film just to horror fans. While yes, that is going to be your bread and butter fan base, you want to bring in as many fans on the outside of the horror community to come in and see your film and maybe get them to appreciate horror movies a bit more. So while I agree what you're wanting to make is going to be directed to horror fans, you don't want to forget about the wider audience, because you want that wider audience to still support your film. So the next paragraph is just a synopsis of what happened in the original film. We're not going to cover that. So yeah, this is the image I'm talking about. So this is fine, because this is, again, one of the primary promotional images that was used for the first film. And that's exactly the scene I'm talking about. And this happens very early on in the film. I don't think we should have to say spoilers, but spoilers, it happens early on in the film. The film's been out for a minute, so again, I can't imagine I just spoiled anything, but it does happen earlier on in the film. It is a pretty so spoiler, she does, I believe, if I remember correctly, she actually kills her husband before she kills herself. And she kills him with the same axe. So, all right, so that's going to end this topic again. When Evil Lurks getting a sequel. All right, so let's move on. New Blumhouse horror movie debuts with underwhelming Rotten Tomatoes score compared to original $181 million hit. So we're not going to read this line by line. Many of you may already know what film we're talking about, but we are going to jump into it. A new Blumhouse horror movie has debuted with an underwhelming Rotten Tomatoes score compared to the original hit, founded by Jason Blum. So we're not going to read all that. Let's move, because that just gives some background about the studio itself. Despite its history over its hits, Blumhouse's recent track record has been mixed. While movies like The Black Phone and M3GAN were commercial, I don't know why it says it twice, were commercial and commercial hits. More recent titles like Night Swim, Imaginary, and Alfred AI all underperformed at the box office, and Afraid. Sorry, that's what it's supposed to be. Afraid. That looked like an L. to 25% or lower on Rotten Tomatoes. However, their Speak No Evil remake ended 2024 on a high note, earning a solid 83% scores on Rotten Tomatoes. This year has been more mixed, with The Woman in the Yard receiving a lackluster 39% score, followed by Drop's strong 84% score. Now Blumhouse has a new horror movie coming out, and it's a sequel to a 2022 hit, which is the M3GAN 2.0. And it says, and just so you know, it says coming out. This article was just posted less than a day ago, so I don't know if they mean by coming out in regards to like digital and VOD, because so I mean, we know it's already been out. M3GAN 2.0 has debuted with an underwhelming Rotten score compared to the original, a follow-up to 2022's M3GAN. The sequel centers on the reconstruction of the Model 3 generation android to take on a humanoid military robot created using her own technology that is leading an AI uprising. So we have the background of M3GAN 2.0 casting. We don't need to read all that. All right, so let's get down here. M3GAN 2, now a few days ahead of its release, M3GAN 2 has debuted with a 61% score from the critics on Rotten Tomato, which, while not bad, is underwhelming compared to the 93%. Now, I'm not surprised to hear about this. I'm not surprised to see the score being much lower, because I felt like they went a completely different direction with this, based on what we've seen thus far. I mean, as we know, the film hasn't fully debuted as of yet. I do think, though, from what we've seen in all the early reviews, and I haven't read any in-depth reviews, just like 2-3 sentences, how this feels more like a sci-fi action versus like a sci-fi horror. So and it almost felt like it went the Terminator 2 route, if I was to give it a comparison. So I'm not surprised to see this. I'm not surprised that a sequel is struggling. Most sequels tend to not live up to the original. I'm not saying that's all, because I know a lot of people can throw out, like I just mentioned, Terminator 2, Godfather 2. I mean, there's a lot of films that surpass their original, but this isn't going to be one of them. And I think early reviews, early opinions are kind of falling in line with that. What's M3GAN's 2.0 Rotten Tomatoes score mean for the movie? I mean, I think if I don't hold too much, and I've always said this before, I don't hold too much when it comes to reviews. I like to watch movies on my own and for my own opinion. But all that said, I think the broader audience that doesn't go in depth into many horror movies and TV series like we do, or other channels or commentaries, they're going to look at this very much for face value. And the ones that do rely on sites like Rotten Tomatoes, they're going to see that and be like, oh, well, I don't want to see that. It looks like the reviews are really bad. And like right here, I mean, I'm just cherry picking this. They even mentioned right here Terminator 2. Otherwise, the reviews are sharply divided, while some critics are praising the sequel's campy humor, genre shift to action comedy, and the self-aware absurdity, likening it to Terminator 2 and Evil Dead 2. Others are calling it convoluted mess, criticizing its tonal inconsistency and lack of horror. And like I said, I think that's what's going to hurt it. Many people are going to expect I don't want to say continuation, but something very similar to the original. But it's abandoning its original kind of concept of the horror base, and it's moving more to that sci-fi action. And they're calling it here campy humor and genre shift, action comedy. So I think that's what's going to hurt it the most when it comes to a comparable thing. And as you see here, the film drops tomorrow, so not looking too good for M3GAN 2.0. And if I remember correctly, we covered off not too long ago whether or not there's already talks of doing a M3GAN 3.0. I don't see that happening if this one isn't successful, and especially if the reviews are already underwhelming. Word of mouth is going to carry pretty quick on this one if it turns out to be pretty bad. So anyways, we'll keep an eye on this one. As far as not so much 2.0, we'll keep more of an eye on now after 2.0 releases this weekend, where it lands, and I think more how quickly it comes to digital. We've seen a lot of horror films where they are not blockbuster, but main studio releases, and they're only in theaters for 3 weeks, maybe 3.5, before they're pulled and then put onto digital and VOD. I see that happening with this. We were tracking, I think, 4 or 5 movies earlier this year. The same thing happened to them. They had a lot of backing. They were getting a lot of marketing. and they hit digital really quick because they just completely underperformed at the theaters. So I can see M3GAN 2.0 running into that same problem. And I think we'll see this one on digital and VOD around this same time come July. It won't be in theaters long. All right, so our last topic for this horror news update sequence of various stories is Sweet Revenge. Jason Universe announces Jason Voorhees short film from director Mike Nelson. So I'm a bit surprised. So this dropped this morning, as you can see from the timestamp, not too long ago, probably by this time, about 20-30 minutes ago. A bit surprised to see that they're doing a short film for on this versus trying to push forward with a full feature film. But maybe the whole point of this, Jason universe is to introduce things like short films, full feature films. We know we're getting a TV series as well, so they're really going all in for this Jason universe. A multi-platform expansion of the franchise from its original owners, the Jason universe has been taking shape this year with everything from NECA toys to a Halloween Horror Nights attraction announced thus far. What else is coming this year, you ask? Variety has announced Sweet Revenge this afternoon, described as a short film that will serve as the centerpiece of the franchise's bold 45th anniversary campaign. What the hell does that mean? Well, it sounds like Sweet Revenge is a glorified commercial for Angry Orchard Hard Cider, with a short set to debut on the Jason Voorhees YouTube channel, as well as a site hosted by Angry Orchard. Variety notes in their report that Angry Orchard is sponsoring as a large part of large collaboration with the franchise. We're going to come back to how much longer is this article? Not much. Okay, so we're going to pause there for a second. If you're going to give me literally a commercial for a hard cider beverage, I think you're wasting time on trying to get, I don't know how to describe this. I think you're wasting time that could be put forward on getting a new feature film for this franchise out. I don't want to see a glorified commercial, especially when you're just advertising a drink. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see this progressing the franchise or the character in any way, shape, or form. And this could be something that the fans just take a look at and mock, to be honest. So let's move forward. Sweet Revenge will be directed by Mike P. Nelson, who also recently wrapped production on Cineverse and Blade discussing Silent Night, Deadly Night reboot. Quote, I am so grateful that the team at Horror Inc. saw something in Sweet Revenge and wanted it as part of the Jason Voorhees story, Nelson said in a statement. And to think 30 years ago I was trying to secretly watch these movies on VHS when no one was looking. To have the opportunity to write and direct one of these stories is surreal, not to mention having an amazing team led by Chad and Brianna help me bring it to life. Not only is a new take on the beloved IP, it's a comforting, gory hug reminding us why we fell in love with these movies. Much gruesome fun awaits. And then we just go on a little bit more about the 45th anniversary, Angry Orchard partnering, so nothing new there. And then a quote from Angry Orchard sponsored production. Jason Universe is also a key figure in the upcoming Peacock and A24 TV series Crystal Lake as an expanded prequel. We've talked about that constantly. I think we just did a video earlier this week on the latest on that. And then we've all seen this, which I know many of us do not like. This is the new look for Jason, for this Jason universe. I do not like this whatsoever. It doesn't, in my opinion, unless they're going to tweak this. If this were to be a live action picture, this isn't live action. If it was, if they were to tweak this, he just doesn't look menacing. In any way, shape, or form. So we'll wait and see if and when this is the maybe we'll see a live action of this in this short film glorified commercial. Who knows? And if we do, I'll be happy to admit if I'm wrong, and if it happens to look absolutely fire when we do see it, because we do see in this Sweet Revenge here, we see Jason right here, or we see the mask being worn by somebody, so we can assume this is Jason. So if that is going to be a live action of that image that we just saw. Again, if it looks absolutely great in this, I will be the first one to come back and say, hey, I was wrong. This actually looks really good. Would love it to see that take in a full feature film. Otherwise, it looks very underwhelming just based on that first concept art. So Anyways, that's going to do it for this horror news update on the stories. We got The Mummy wrapping production. We're getting a sequel to When Evil Lurks. M3GAN 2.0 is not looking like it's going to be all that great since they somewhat abandoned what made the first one great. And now we're getting a glorified, what they're calling, their words, not mine, a glorified commercial / short film in the Jason Voorhees universe called Sweet Revenge. So drop a comment in the comments section. Let me know what you think about any one of these stories or all of these stories. And if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next one. Later.